little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob 2 Buddies podcast. In this episode, we discuss Chapter 3 of the FX original series, Legion. I'm Mothman, and I'm joined by the little Hitler to my fatty, Natty Light. What's going on?
Hey, what am I? What?
Little Hitler is what I've taken to calling that scary, creepy kid from the story. He looks kind of like a little Hitler, yes, and then does. Fatty is the demon with yellow eyes.
He's the yeah, that's what we are. We're the little Hitler, and Fatty is what you call him?
Yeah, just call him Fatty.
Yeah, those are good character names.
It is.
Solid.
Now you got to do your part of the intro where you go over all the social media stuff and what else we're covering.
Absolutely. Hey, guys. If you like what you hear today, and if you enjoy listening to us talk, follow us on the Twitters, on the Facebooks, on the RSS feeds, and Mathis will go over the others if there's more. Instagram. Follow us on those, man. And we talk about TV shows all the time. So join us. If there's anything you're interested in listening to or anything you're watching right now that you want to hear us talk about, shoot us an email or a tweet and let us know, because we're always evolving what we do. So, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you did pretty good for me not telling you were going to do that.
I did not know that I was going to do that, so I had to try to come up with a list of social media things off the top of my head.
Also, subscribe and
do that.
Rate and review our podcast, so that helps our indexing. And anyway, enough of all that stuff. We're also just covering a bunch of other shows. Big Little Lies just started by the Bettys.
The Bettys.
Black Mirror is about to finish in its entirety until they do another season. They just did one recapping the season of whole first season of Young Pope that's available now. So all kinds of good stuff. And then Taboo season finale next week, which got really good this week. So
wait, is Young Pope over, or was it released all at once?
I mean, it was HBO. Season 1's over. I don't know if it's like a mini series or if it's continuing. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
It's done right now.
Oh, okay, cool, nice.
Yeah, so
I'm excited to watch that.
Let's get straight into our first segment. Summon it up in a tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up, summon it up. Oh yeah, we're summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up, summon it up and up. Tweet.
All right, my tweet. I thought long and hard about this.
Okay.
My tweet is: dive into the mind of a 30-year-old psychopath as he dives into the mind of an 8-year-old psychopath. Hashtag Legion. Hashtag Inception. Hashtag sorry had to pee.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
See,
He was sorry he had to pee, because then he saw.
He was sorry. He was very apologetic.
Yeah. Okay. Mine has all kinds of misspellings to make it fit, and yet,
okay.
I still wasn't happy with it. Anyway, that's kind of my trend. But I think this works as a wrap. So why don't you give me a beat?
Ooh, okay.
Okay. David's mind is on high defense. Gotta sedate him. Get to the bottom of this. Little Hitler and Fatty, they growing in size. Can David the God save his mind? All right, that's it. You went so slow.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were looking for a harder beat.
Well, I don't think I wanted anything too fast, because I tried it with Fox last night and it was way too fast. But at the same time, I was like, man, I can't even find the rhythm.
I'm sorry. Well, on top of that, even as slow as that was, I have broken my microphone.
Broken your microphone?
Well, no. Just it fell apart. Like part of the microphone that I put together fell apart. So, but you know what? All is good. All is good, because I'm still good to start talking about Legion. That was a good tweet. I agree. That summed up the whole episode.
All right. Well, that was summon it up in a tweet.
So, well, one of the things that I've been thinking because as I'm watching the episodes, I'm actually thinking about this tweet, right? And I'm thinking, I like the idea of summing it up in a tweet, because especially in a show like this, and a show that you watch week to week, as opposed to like a Netflix show that you consume all at once, each episode sort of has to have a purpose. And I'm watching each episode going, okay, why this episode? Like, what were they thinking when they wrote this episode? What was the point of this episode in the grander whole? What did I learn about David from this, or what did I take away? And there are some episodes of shows that are week to week, which is like one of the large problems I have with The Walking Dead, where I feel like I watch episodes and I go, I swear, like that whole 40 minutes I just watched didn't give me a sufficient amount of information that actually wants me to drive me forward.
In general, though, I mean, Yes, I will absolutely agree. It's a different like art form almost of storytelling. When you write a movie, you're being very condensed in terms of your storytelling, or you're just not trying to cover a whole lot of ground. Whereas in a television show, you can zoom out, you can cover a whole lot. And I liken it a lot to comics, right? Because comics have always been a monthly medium. If you go back to like their origins, they used to always just be standalone, right? Like one issue was one story, same characters, but like that arc was kind of over, very self-contained, kind of like almost a comedy show today. Like
sure.
They develop the characters. Like Always Sunny has very distinct characters at this point, but for the most part, it's not like continuation. Then
that's true.
Over time, they became like these story arcs. So like over 6 months, 6 issues would come out and it would tell one story. And then eventually in the 80s, it got to a point where they were collecting those stories in like trade paperbacks or graphic novels, and people would read them all in one binge. And there are definitely writers that like Grant Morrison's a comic writer I really enjoy, but his stuff is pretty complicated at times, and a lot of like read in between the lines, and it's kind of like almost like a Westworld, I would imagine.
Okay, sure.
In terms of so many pieces moving. So his stuff, in a month, waiting a month for an episode, essentially, I would usually get lost. I would usually need to reread the last one. So I just stopped buying his stuff monthly and would just, binge it. And I wonder how much thought the writers of Netflix series, especially the first few series, were thinking about that compared to the people now knowing it's kind of like a mainstay.
Right. No, you're right. Like, and that's a hard thing to do. I feel like with a monthly medium, like you need to make sure that each installment gives the reader enough like new information, or at least thrills the reader enough that they can hold on to that and be like, for a month they can say, yeah, that was a really good one. Otherwise, if you have one bad issue and it's boring, and now I've got to wait 2 months, I'm essentially 2 months for another episode that I like. One. Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and Walking Dead is a perfect example of a show that does just, in general, have full episodes that are a waste.
Right. Yeah.
And so it really prolongs that, because now you're waiting 2 weeks for to keep interested, to the point where you eventually got to where you just binge it now.
Yeah. Which is where exactly, because I'm basically caught up, but I always basically wait until the season's over and then watch the whole season before the next one starts, because I'm always back into it. Like, there's always great things about it, but it's very much a show that I should have consumed it all in one and not week to week. And whereas I just finished Daredevil, and like Daredevil, I still feel, and I guess I don't know because I didn't wait week to week, but I feel like each episode stood on its own pretty well, but it was a great binging experience. All of that to say, this episode of Legion has a very clear and it's like concise point, and I love that. I was like, okay, I get what we're doing here. We're diving into David's mind, and we're learning a lot more about David, and we're not waiting for episodes and episodes to answer some of these questions that we arose in the first and second episode. We're giving you more information than I even thought we would get this early into the show.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, cool. I saw this episode, and in my mind, the point of it was to show, especially to the audiences that aren't familiar with the comic character, and also just for audiences that are and aren't sure which direction they're taking it, but to show the extent of his powers. And, have him straight up referred to as a god.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep. And you're right, his powers. So we're getting almost like a checklist of powers now. Whereas in the first episode, you're like, I don't know what's going on, man. Like, this dude can do all sorts of stuff, and I can't figure it out. And it's very like esoteric. And then now, with each new time he uses his like teleporting things somewhere, or projecting himself to another location, or moving things with his mind, each time he uses those powers, you go, okay, I get it now. I'm understanding it a little bit more. I'm adding it to my checklist of powers that David has. I'm sure there's infinitely more things he can do that we don't even know, but still having a clear understanding of like 2 or 3 things that he can do helps us to understand David a lot more. I wondered if this episode was going to go directly to him trying to save his sister.
Yeah, and you almost think, I mean, he says like, let me just go teleport to Amy. Like, he wants to do it again. Like, no, at this point it's going to end in 2 ways. They're either just going to kill you, or they're going to let you live, follow you, and then kill all of us. Because he does make it to Amy, but just leaves once the eye reaches out,
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, and I liked that. So, like, they didn't forget about Amy. They reference it, but they still spend the time that we're going to need, like, learning who David is. So I thought that was.
I was on Reddit, the Legion Reddit, and I can't actually remember what the original post was, and you just saying it jogged my memory. but someone said they forgot about, and it wasn't Amy, but they forgot about whatever, and then someone said they forgot about Shady, and then someone said they forgot about Dre. Which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's funny. That's good.
Anyway, so they're doing, like, kind of things start off right with them doing that memory work. And one thing I really wanted to point out about the memory work that I did read on Reddit, and I can't find that post, otherwise I wanted to give credit, so I apologize. And ultimately it wasn't, like, some witty saying, it was just an observation. I guess the memory work where they're holding those, cylinders to kind of work through their past is straight up out of Scientology.
Oh.
They do classes like that where they hold cylinders and they kind of basically go through any traumatic experiences to work through and put their past at bay and, get their thetan levels up and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, and what's interesting though is because that like distinction was drawn and the conversation we had last episode wondering like, are these actually even good guys, right? Or is it just some other group with nefarious means that are, they rescued them, so they have the positive card right now, but otherwise they could just be as evil. You kind of get a stronger inclination that that's not the case in this episode, right? There's a lot more trust being built. I mean, it still could be the case. There's a lot more trust being built. She's talking about the reason the school existed. She's talking about the divisions in general, multiple divisions branched out. All these places were essentially like little Xavier School for Gifted Children's, where, where they're trying to responsibly show these kids how to use their power and so on and so forth. And it's Division 3 that's, specifically after them.
Well, there was a giant X behind his head at one point. So
I know, there's that X window.
I don't think that they're like trying to hide that this is essentially their Xavier School. So, and I agree, because there was she straight up asked in this episode, "Oh, you want to use him, right?" And like, there's no other reason to write the line that she says after that other than to build trust in her, which is like, no, I want to fix him because he deserves to be happy. And then I want to use him.
Exactly.
She's honest.
Yeah, I want to fix him and the like issues he has and the trauma that is associated with, and they continue this metaphor, right? The trauma that's associated with them getting their powers. It's kind of like it's analogous to puberty. Being ostracized, it's kind of always been a racial metaphor. Like, I want them to be okay with who they are and the things they've been through. But then, absolutely, like any youth, let's harness their power for the good of humankind.
Thinking about this, though, if she's a villain, she's the best villain in the world, and no one else has tried this. If I were a villain and there was a superhero, I wanted to dive into his mind, and I wanted to sedate him to do it, I wouldn't tell him. I would have a bodyguard grab him and bring him somewhere and strap him down and then dive into his mind and sedate him without him knowing. Like, that's your classic villain, like, get what you want by force.
Sure.
If she's a villain, she's just building a lot of rapport and trust.
To do it.
Straight up saying, I want to sedate you. And he's like, yeah, okay.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, your defense is too strong. Let's sedate you first. Yeah, that is true. Although I just feel like... after he was sedated, she would have given her like big, long-winded, like Bond villain exposition scene.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah, she should have she would have done the Mr. Burns like hand grab thing and started kind of going through her master plan. Anyway, so she's talking about kind of to move things along because, like, to your point about let's sedate him. Before they get to the sedation, she basically says her name's Melanie, right? The head of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyway, so let's call her Melanie. Melanie says she needs to like basically cut ahead. Like, we're gonna bump you up a few semesters or a few grades because as much as I would like to take my time with your powers, we're limited on time because of Amy. We were actually speculating, is she even gonna want him to leave? Like, she's pretty openly saying, let's go help your sister. So
but we have to be safe first, though. Like, you gotta get these things done first. Yeah.
So like, let's get to the trauma. Let's not fool around with the other stuff. What the fuck happened in the kitchen, right?
Yep.
And so we get that scene from scene 1. And one thing I liked about this episode is kind of the scattered scenes. There's this balancing act that's happening that I really like, which is we don't really know what's real other than the current stuff, right? The current stuff that's happening. There's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of memories. Some are flashbacks, some are memories, some are both. His mind is in such disarray, and the or like kind of nature of his powers, you aren't sure if those are real. So it actually can be kind of fatiguing as a viewer. Very also similar to Westworld at first, when you're not sure who's who, in that you're almost like, is it going to be some M. Night Shyamalan twist every episode, and these memories are going to fall off, and this is not going to happen? So the point I wanted to make earlier about the power is it's nice to see concrete things like that confirmed, because even if the nature of the story and the narrative kind of continues to change and morph and kind of play tricks on you, very like Christopher Nolan, then at least we're also still getting some hard, concrete world building facts. There's multiple divisions, there's multiple schools, this is your power, those types of things.
There's very little that's fun to watch about just being confused every episode. And
so they make it happen.
Yeah, that I think that's the best thing that like Noah Hawley's style has brought to this, because it's the same thing with Fargo too. Like, if I could compare it in one way, there's a lot of stuff going on in Fargo, and you could spend every episode talking about some different guy doing some different thing that has very little, a loose connection to the greater story, but you don't want to do that. You want to call back to your key elements, your anchor points, because you want your audience to feel like every week their knowledge of what's going on has grown.
Sure.
Even a little bit. And that's what these sort of anchor points do, and these sort of world building facts that you're talking about allow for, is for me to feel like next week I'm not just starting over again in my head watching some new crazy confusing episode of Legion. I'm building on what I learned last week about what David's memories include, and how he can sort of get stuck in his memories and that sort of thing.
Yep. So they finally, like, as they kind of delve into these things, right? And one of the world building things they do is they recall, like, they are starting to confirm some of these flashes of memories, right? So one of which is the kitchen. We haven't just randomly been shown this for nothing. It actually happened, all that good stuff. And it's after a fight with his girlfriend, who he'd been dating about 10 months. Things just start to shake. We've seen this before, where he opens up, the bagel thing opens up, and he doesn't know what's going on. He even gets cut by a knife. It's very clear that he just has no control whatsoever. They're kind of blown away by this, because it's the first time they see it. If you recall, I think Potomi, or whatever his name is, he asked about, what was that flash? I saw it for a second, that glitch we were talking about. This is the memory in full. And this is a revelation for, her getting to that point later where she says we need to harness his powers, but let's give him what he wants out of life first. This is the moment she realizes he has like telekinetic powers. It's not just mind stuff, it's physically moving things. And then obviously stuff further complicates, but then they turn like right, and we see the frog, the vapor scene. And
yes, we do.
And you kind of confirm, okay, the Aubrey Plaza character definitely
Lenny's
predates. Lenny's real, predates the mental hospital. May not actually even have been in the mental hospital. I think it's more likely that it was just a memory he took with him.
But then later, when Sid is him, she kills Lenny.
What?
Right? Isn't that who she puts in the wall in the first episode? Is Lenny? I thought she kills Lenny. That's, you see Lenny in the wall, and then later she says, "I'm sorry, I killed your friend," and that's the moment that he starts seeing Lenny in the bedroom.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so they both got checked in. You're right.
Yeah.
That was one of those things I wasn't sure if it was a vision or not, because it was in that nightmare room. There's no doors, and he just saw Lenny in a wall. But I didn't realize that line of dialogue. Okay, so
that's why she says, "You killed me," and he's like, "It wasn't me," and she says, "You don't give a newbie a bazooka."
Gotcha.
And not expect him to blow something up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Sid, with his powers, had that happen. Gotcha.
Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, Penny. I guess Lenny is around the same time he's dating Penny. She comes home, some birthday cake or something, and he's just high out of his mind. A fight ensues, and you kind of start to see what was kind of the last straw, why they broke up, what led to that, and what ultimately led to him going into the mental institution.
Yeah. And so this as well, like, gives you something to build your knowledge on, is that we have a clear understanding of essentially David's life pre-mental institution and how he got where he is. And then we also get a glimpse, because we're talking about the way that David sort of like made his way to the mental hospital. We also, through this episode, get a glimpse of his sister's reluctance almost, or her self-doubt about her brother. And I'm not sure if like she's completely, if we're supposed to get that she's completely believes that he's truly schizophrenic, or if she's sort of always had doubts, and the Division 3 is sort of like toying with those doubts and causing her to believe.
I guess you're not 100% sure, but to me it comes off as she's very much convinced he's schizophrenic. Like, experts have told her this. He's gone to a mental institution. All this has happened. But the doubt is just now starting because he kind of plainly puts into words all the things she grew up seeing and just not explaining, but also, you know, you can, it's well documented, you can basically alter your memories, right?
Right, absolutely.
If you think enough about it, like, you know, we don't have great recall. Eyewitnesses are like the most unreliable thing out there. So that's very possible. And then I think just the fact that she's big tortured and like put leeches on and stuff, she's like, yeah, there's probably some credence to the fact that my brother's not just crazy, because why the fuck would they want a crazy person?
Why would they do this?
Yeah, so I think she's coming around to the idea.
Yeah, and in that scene, because that's a scene where we get a glimpse of David's like power, whereby he can, I guess, project himself to other locations, or I don't know if he's truly teleporting or what he's doing. Yeah. But one, he brought Sid, right?
Yes.
And then two, the eye, as we're learning more about Walter is his name, he could see David. So whatever the eye's powers are, they include being able to see David when he's not actually there.
Yes.
It's a very specific power.
Yeah, when he's kind of like Star Wars hologram there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So at this point, probably a good place to go ahead and cut to Audible Lab. But before that, we have an interview. And I'm just going to leave it at that because we're going to introduce the person in the interview.
Player 3 has entered the game.
Hey buddies, today I'm joined by Ash from the History of Westeros and Fandom Media podcasts. Ash, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, especially after that great episode last night.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was so blown away by that last night.
You know, I really liked it, and I was surprised because I'm not a big horror fan, and it was a really horror-centric episode, but I loved it.
Yes, it was. And when you talk about the mixing of genres of the show and it sort of bouncing back and forth between drama and romance, this episode, in the end, you get this great horror sequence that's essentially directly out of a horror movie. And I felt the same way. I'm not huge on that, but I loved the way they built suspense. So I guess overall, we're 3 episodes in. What are your overall impressions of the show so far? Is it living up to your expectations?
Oh, it definitely is. My expectations are blown away so far. So far, the things that I'm thinking about a lot are the nature of identity and reality. And I mean, the big theories right now are who's real, who's a personality right now, or who might become a personality. And if David is able to project people or create personalities, they're essentially real. So I don't know if the debate is that important.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. It's, you know, it comes down to what does David find real and what do those people around him actually believe about what he's experiencing. And that's sort of one of the conversations we're having on this episode, which is, you know, the people around him and those people, you know, who are either trying to help him or save him, they kind of have to come to terms with his reality. Have you found that you like a lot of the characters outside of David in the show, or are you struggling to connect with them?
I like a lot of the characters. There's a lot of characters that I want to see more depth from. For instance, Ptolemy. I think he has a really interesting power, and I'd like to see the drawbacks to that power. But we're only 3 episodes in. I certainly wouldn't have expected us to get in depth with him yet.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm finding that same sort of thing with Melanie, where I'm liking her enough after this episode that I'd really like to dive in and learn more about her and her history and her past. I think that's really important with a show like this, where you're so isolated, like your main character is so specific and sort of isolated from reality.
Yeah, I think Melanie is really interesting because you get kind of an ominous vibe from her at first, especially with Lenny saying that she has secrets. But in this episode, you see this sad vibe that she has, I think, as well. And I felt bad for her, honestly.
Yeah, you kind of lose the sense that she's lying. She may be hiding things, but I don't think she's actively lying, you know, for her own gain. You kind of get the sense that she truly does mean good, and though meaning good might, you know, have negative consequences every once in a while, she's willing to accept those consequences for the greater good of humanity.
Yes, right.
You know, so there's a lot of characters in the show that it's sort of difficult to figure out exactly what their purpose is, such as we've got what Mathis loves to refer to as Little Hitler and Fatty, which would be the demon with the yellow eyes. Do you have any ongoing theories about their place in the whole story?
Well, obviously, I've seen tons of theories based on the comics and whatnot, and I think that there might be inspiration from those characters, but I think we're seeing an basically new character here that I think they're just the personification of his fears and the monstrous things that he's done.
Sure. So you feel like that character truly does just solely exist within David's head?
I do think that, but I also think that he has the ability to project people. Like, you see Carrie and Carrie Loudermilk, and he has that ability. It seems that they split up or they become one, and I think of David's potential power as maybe a element of that, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I know, I absolutely do. And one of the interesting things is trying to figure out all of those different powers that David has, because the list seems to be almost infinite in terms of what he can do. Have you had any thoughts about like David's powers and sort of the things he can do that maybe we haven't explored yet? Well, one that I've thought about a lot is, the pyrokinesis that we see in the first episode, and we never actually get it answered whose ability that is. And of course, in the comics, he has that ability. So I wonder if that was him or if that was the only other person it could have been is the female Carrie Loudermilk. Yeah, that is possible. And that's sort of one of the things about this is the show is so sort of esoteric in a way that it's difficult to always identify who's doing what and what is coming from who. And I guess that can sort of be, a sort of flaw of the X-Men story as a whole is there's so many different powers going around. It's hard to tell, who is doing what. But David has this way of sort of making things happen that don't quite have an explanation. And so everything sort of comes back to him in this show. And that's one of the things that drives me back to it. Any other ongoing thoughts about the show at all? One thing I've been thinking about a lot is the character of Sid. And obviously, I'm still not entirely sure if she's one of David's personalities or if that's going to be the great tragedy that she's going to become one of his personalities eventually. I can't help but wonder. Gosh. And no, I haven't put it that way in my head. That's so sad. Yeah, it could be the case, certainly, but I also think a lot about her power, and it's one of the things that bugs me a little bit is I think it's a little tropey to have the untouchable woman character, and I'm really looking forward to them diving into her character more, and that's the case here in episode 3, where we hear a little bit about her mother, and I really hope they go further with that so that she has more depth. Yeah, because then they also sort of dive in a little bit to some of the other people that she's become and how that has sort of changed her emotionally and affected her, which is interesting. And we are getting a little bit of a sense of maybe some of the sort of fallout of her becoming David at some point, and how that's affecting the way that she views reality now. And I'm totally with you. I would love her to be more than just, the untouchable female character who is sort of just exists as a love interest to David. There obviously seems to be more to her, and I'm very excited for them to dive further into that. Yeah, I have high hopes. Yeah, me too. Well, Ash, just to give our listeners just a little bit more context, for you in television, what sorts of shows outside of Legion and obviously Game of Thrones, what things sort of like strike your fancy? What are your big favorite shows, your Bring to an Island shows? Well, let's see. I watch a lot of TV. Last year I had a top 50 of 2016 list that was just my top 50. There were shows I didn't even list. So my favorite shows, though, that I think are most in line with Legion, I like Mr. Robot. That was my #1 show of the year. And obviously that has a lot of clear similarities. I also love the show Utopia, which is off the air, but is very similar aesthetically. So anyone who's watching the show and likes this aesthetic should check out Utopia. It's just 2 seasons, British show. And obviously stuff like Black Mirror and Better Call Saul. Those are all my top 5 shows of the year. Nice. Very cool. I'm excited. Better Call Saul, I think, is going to be coming back. They gave a date, I think, but I don't remember when. Yeah, I'm excited for that to come back. Yeah, very soon. Yeah, April. Soon. Not soon enough. April. There you go. Yeah, April as well. Very cool. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it seems like your viewing pleasure is very much in line with the sorts of things that we like. So it's awesome to hear from someone who's also into Legion and sort of has a good perspective on what's going on.
Ash, if you wouldn't mind, tell our listeners, what projects do you work on? Tell us about those and where they can find you.
Well, as you guys mentioned, I'm currently doing 2 podcasts. History of Westeros, we just do Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire stuff, and we recently started Fandom Media. You can find us at fandommedia.reviews on iTunes, Google Play, everything. Over there, we're about to record our first Legion episode. We wanted to wait till there was a few episodes because I was kind of on another level than my co-hosts, because I'm into spoilers and I couldn't have had a discussion with them about it at this point, but now I can. And we're covering Always Sunny in Philadelphia and The Expanse right now.
Great. What are your thoughts on It's Always Sunny so far this season? This is just for me.
It's so good. I love this season. I mean, Hero or Hate Crime is already just an all-time classic. They've definitely moved forward so much. I'm so happy with this season.
You've seen PTSD?
Yes, that one was so good too. Yeah, I love them all. I love last night's episode too. I mean, Wednesday night's the best night of the week right now for me.
There you go. Well, Ash, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and for giving us your perspective. And I hope we can talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'll definitely be tuning in throughout the season.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Ash.
Player 3 has left the game.
All right, and we are back. A big thank you to Ash from the History of Westeros and Fandom Media podcast for doing an interview for us. If you guys are fans of ours, hit us up on any of the social medias. We would love to have you on as an interview. We're just trying to find interesting people that are interested in the same stuff we are, providing different perspectives, so all that good stuff. Anyway, back to the show. So at this point, we should probably dive into the main set piece, which is them diving deeper after he is sedated and all the stuff that starts to transpire.
Yeah, man. So, and this sort of episode leads up to this sequence. It's a very adventurous sequence here at the end that, in a way, sort of abruptly cuts off and left me going like, wait, what? And left me really excited for the next episode. But this is like the meat of this episode to me, is this sequence at the end where they sedate David and they go into his memories and we start to like sort of see things that we haven't seen before. And the interesting point to me, firstly, is that he brings Sid, who requests to be brought, and he first says no, and then she sort of convinces him like, no, it's safe, bring me. But when he does, and when they're watching him, there's a scene where he's raiding a room. He's sort of, I think he's in his psychiatrist's office. David is.
Yeah, he's going through the desk.
Yep, he's going through the desk. Sid starts to see things that Melanie and Memory Guy don't see. And it's similar to the things from earlier when David sees the room sort of start to shake and sort of starts to get kind of afraid.
Yeah, she sees like the wall crack open. There'd be this red light and these tiny little hands kind of prying through. Very creepy.
Yeah. And another parallel to earlier is that at that point, something is blocking them from switching memory. And earlier it was assumed that like David was actively preventing them from switching memory or from going anywhere. And now David really isn't a part of this. He's sedated. He's the kid right now in this memory. He's a young version of himself. Sid is seeing something move and shake, and all the craziness going on, and yet he still can't switch memory. So that to me implies that either there's some sort of external presence and that the demon with the yellow eyes is maybe a part of David's psyche, but also maybe some sort of external thing that's gotten taken advantage of David and gotten into his psyche. Yeah, exactly. That's preventing his memories from being wholesome and sort of corrupting his memories.
Yeah, there's characters in Marvel, like Shadow King. There is actually a character in Marvel named Mojo that looks similar to the demon with the yellow eyes, that kind of has his whole universe. I don't know if they're going that way, but I do feel like this is building up to be either just a part of his psyche that will always be there and like he has to fight against and needs to eradicate, or more like an actual villain that's going to emerge. Because Sid sees the demon with yellow eyes and like these evil kind of things happening. They don't. I imagine, and you also see like the little Hitler dude running around, right? That they don't all see, do they?
Right, exactly.
Until the end.
Yes, that's true.
So that's the thing, is like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's after you spend a certain amount of time in his mind, you start to get almost infected. But she did the whole, they talk about it this episode, I imagine, to remind us, but they did the whole body switch.
I was gonna. That's where my head went. Is I'm like, Sid has been David. Like she has spent time as him.
And so by the end of the episode, Melanie, did we confirm that's her name?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So Melanie,
IMDb,
who has not been in his mind for as long, isn't seeing like the evil hands coming out and all this other stuff until the end when she finds the book. It smashes and mangles her hand. The demon with yellow eyes is behind her and growing. And then she finally wakes up and like is convinced her hand is smashed because it was so lifelike. So it's like she starts to see those things towards the end.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're spending time in David's mind and you're sort of beginning to see the things that are truly bothering him or the things that are truly affecting him internally. But I like that. And I like the more that other people in this universe grow to understand David. That's one thing I never want to spend too long on in sort of a fish out of water story like this is the amount of time in which no one understands him. So like there's always a moment, there's always the beginning of the show is always there's this guy and he's crazy and no one gets it. Yeah. And the more that we grow, even just a small cast of characters who get it, who understand what's happening, or at least are, in the know and then want to help him figure it out, the more satisfying the show becomes. And I think that's why this episode was so satisfying to me, because you've got a group of people who you grow to trust a little bit more, at least, who get inside David's mind and who learn what's really kind of going on and want to help him get to the bottom of it, all towards the greater aspiration of saving his sister. So the show has like a goal now, has a direction we're moving, it has characters we like. Ah, man, I'm into it. I'm into this.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah. So the sister, the immediate mission is to save the sister. And to do that, they want to harness his powers. We know he is one of numerous, child schools. The Division 3 is after him. Like so many things were kind of solidified to make things pleasing. You also seem to think that pretty much anyone that goes into his mind is going to be subject to these demons that he's working through. And maybe that's like, maybe that's the next few episodes, right? Is like a boss fight. They figure some of these things out. They confront the traumas of his past. They eradicate them. And then he's able to go kick ass with his sister. And, then we start to introduce other villains and other things. So whatever direction it's going, there's like a lot of positive momentum. I'm very much excited about it. I'm trying to think if there's any other stones to unturned.
Can I talk about something that's very important to me? Like probably the most important thing in this show?
Yeah.
The moment that anyone can either find a link to or FX puts on their merchandise website that t-shirt with the orange arrow.
Pretty cool t-shirt.
I'll own that shirt. I'm going to buy that shirt.
I do think it's weird that everyone else is dressed very 60s. He's kind of just like dressed like
he's got like now stuff.
Yeah, I mean, except for like the last episode, like the flashbacks, he's very much just got off like his gondola shift.
Yeah,
right. He has the black and white stripes. I'm sure he was eating a baguette earlier and smoking a cigarette with a little cigarette holder. But other than that, he's very like, I don't know, at least 70s, like punk rock, like later.
Yeah. No, but that t-shirt is something that I feel like I would just see on like the shelf of a Gap, like nowadays or something like that. but I dig it. I like it, and it's like a subtle Legion reference. So if I can find that shirt, that's mine.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's it. I mean, at this point, we want to tie a bow on this bitch?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
That's still your cue.
It's still me. I swear. I always forget that I'm supposed. Hey.
So can I share something with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You watched last week with John Oliver?
Yeah.
You know how there's the and now this.
Yeah.
I think I want to do one of those like as a spoof for like when we hit a year. And just have all the times that we'll see you next time, little buddy, has been butchered by me or any other person that guessed that like Foxman would just awkwardly say that too, and they wouldn't know what it means.
They'd be like, "Oh, okay."
Because I'm sure my favorite one though is yours on I think the first episode where like I'm so bad at bow bitching. I thought it was a funny way to put it. Anyway,
bow bitching.
Are you ready to tie a bow on this bitch?
What do I say?
You really don't know what you say?
Or is it literally just...
We'll see you next time, little buddies.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. Every time you say it, I think that there's a spiel. I think that there's a social media spiel at the end.
Oh, I think Foxman does that occasionally. Hey, guess what, guys? review us on iTunes, all that good
Yes.
stuff. Go to our
Thanks
website.
for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, go to our website, subscribe, blah, 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 and we'll see you next time.
Sign up for a free
I always think,
Audible thing because,
Yeah.
it's actually a really great service. And it
so that's why I get
yeah.
confused. That's why I get confused.
All right, we got this.
All right.
You want to put a bow in this bitch?
Absolutely. See you next time, little buddies.
Perfect.